On a Tuesday morning in October 2024, a lowboy trailer turned onto County Road 9 carrying a John Deere 8R, brand new, software locked, $500,000 of precision agriculture sitting on pressed steel. Mark Patterson stood at the farm gate with his hand raised like a traffic cop. His son Tyler had signed the paperwork. The bank had approved the loan. Everything was legal, everything was financed, and Mark was about to stop it anyway. Because Mark knew something Tyler didn't. The machines you can't fix with your own hands aren't machines you own. They're machines that own you. Now let me tell you about Tyler, because you need to understand him before you understand what happens at that gate. Tyler was 28 years old, and he'd grown up on this farm but never really belonged to it. He'd studied agricultural technology at Iowa State, got his degree in precision farming systems, and came home with a vision his father couldn't see. Tyler didn't think like a farmer. He thought like an engineer. He looked at 2,000 acres and saw data points. He looked at soil and saw numbers. He looked at a tractor and saw a computer. The smart tractor had been seducing Tyler for 2 years. He'd visited the John Deere dealer in town 3 times, watched the demonstrations, studied the specs. GPS guidance that kept your rows straight to within 2 inches. Yield mapping that told you exactly which fields were producing and which were bleeding money. Predictive maintenance. Sensors that knew when a part was about to fail before it actually did. Remote diagnostics, software updates, everything connected to your phone. Tyler had run the pitch past his father a dozen times. Dad, listen, we can monitor soil health in real time. Variable rate application. We only put fertilizer where we actually need it. No more guessing, no more waste. We can cut our input costs by 30% easy. Mark would nod and say nothing, but Tyler could feel the resistance, thick and quiet. The financing made sense on paper, $500,000 over 10 years. Monthly payment came to about $4,100. On a 2,000-acre operation, that was manageable, almost invisible, really. Tyler had run the math 100 times. Even in a moderate year, with decent yields and reasonable corn prices, the tractor would pay for itself through efficiency gains. In a good year, it would generate enough extra profit to pay it down faster. The dealer had said exactly what Tyler wanted to hear. You're not just buying equipment. You're buying into precision agriculture. The future is data-driven. Tyler's confidence was absolute. He'd never experienced a year where everything went wrong at once. The years he'd farmed with his father had been decent. Not spectacular, but steady. He projected forward based on average conditions, average yields, average prices. The numbers worked if you assumed the future would look like the recent past. He didn't know that assumption was about to cost him everything. The dealer's name was Rick Holloway, smooth talker in a pressed shirt, and he understood exactly how to move Tyler's confidence from maybe to done. Rick showed him videos of other young farmers running the 8R, showed him the cab with the touchscreen display, showed him the comfort, the precision, the control. Then he handed Tyler a pen. Tyler signed the papers in March. The tractor was scheduled for delivery in October. He didn't tell his father until after the deal was final. That was his first mistake. Mark Patterson was 52 years old, and he'd inherited this farm from his own father the same way his father had inherited it, with a handshake and a clear understanding that land you didn't own outright wasn't land you controlled. Mark had lived through 3 major downturns. The grain embargo of the early 80s when prices collapsed overnight. The late 90s when commodity crashes wiped out a generation of small operators. And the 2008 financial crisis when land values dropped and farmers who'd borrowed against rising equity watched their collateral disappear. Mark had walked through those years and come out the other side because he'd never owed anyone money. Not the bank, not the dealer, not a single damn corporation. His philosophy was simple. A machine you can't fix with your own hands isn't a machine you own. It's a machine that owns you. Tyler didn't understand this. How could he? He'd grown up during the boom years when equipment worked and prices held steady and the future looked like the recent past stretched indefinitely forward. Tyler believed in the numbers on a spreadsheet. Mark believed in what happened when the numbers changed. When Tyler first mentioned the smart tractor, Mark listened without interrupting. That was his way. But he'd already done the math the dealer wouldn't mention. A dealer service call was $300 an hour minimum. 2 hours for a diagnostic you could probably solve yourself if the software wasn't locked. A software update arrived automatically and disabled the aftermarket guidance system Tyler had installed because the manufacturer decided it wasn't an approved configuration. Subscription fees for features that should have been included in the purchase price. And the thing that kept Mark awake, the thing that proved his point, was what happened in 2015 when John Deere pushed a software update that locked out 10,000 tractors in the middle of harvest season. 10,000 machines, all connected, all controlled by one company in one server room. A glitch in the update, and farmers couldn't operate their own equipment during the most critical week of the year. Mark had clipped that article and saved it. He'd shown it to Tyler twice. Tyler had dismissed it as a one-time mistake, unlikely to happen again. Mark knew better. The mistake had already happened. The only question was when it would happen again. The control question was what really bothered Mark. If the dealer could turn off your tractor with an update, who actually owned it? Tyler owned the metal, but John Deere owned the machine. And when those two things disagreed, the software won. When Tyler finally told him the papers were signed, Mark was standing at the kitchen counter drinking coffee. He set the cup down slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You signed for a $500,000 computer you can't repair, can't modify, and can't control. And you did it knowing I'd never approve it. Tyler's face flushed. I'm 28 years old. I don't need your permission. No, Mark said, you don't need my permission, but you're farming on my land and this equipment isn't coming on it. Dad, the numbers work. I've run them 100 times. Mark looked at his son the way he might look at someone who'd built a house on sand and couldn't understand why the foundation was cracking. You ran them assuming nothing goes wrong. You ran them assuming yields stay steady and prices hold, and you don't get sick and the tractor doesn't break down in the middle of harvest. You ran them like a computer, not like a man who's lived through hard times. Tyler stood up. So what? I'm supposed to farm with equipment from 1975 like you do? No, Mark said. You're supposed to own what you farm with. You're supposed to be able to fix it. You're supposed to know that when everything falls apart, you've got options. This tractor, this machine, takes away your options. It ties you to a dealer and a bank and a software company in Iowa City. And when one of those things decides you're not profitable enough to support, what then? The argument continued, but the outcome was already decided. Tyler had signed the papers. Mark had drawn the line, and in 4 days, that line would hold at the farm gate. The lowboy arrived on a Tuesday morning in October at 7:47 a.m. Mark knew the exact time because he'd been standing at the farm gate since dawn, coffee in a chipped mug, jaw set the way it got when something needed settling. The driver was a guy named David Chin, about 40, professional, used to smooth deliveries and friendly handshakes. He'd hauled equipment for 12 years and never seen a gate locked against him. He climbed down from the cab and walked toward Mark with the delivery papers in his hand. "Sir, I've got a John Deere 8R for Tyler Patterson. Farm address is—" Mark raised his hand. Not angry, just a hand up. "This is my property. That tractor isn't coming through this gate." David blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The paperwork is signed. The loan is approved. I understand all that. But the delivery address is my land, and I'm refusing delivery." David looked at the paperwork, then at the tractor on the trailer behind him, then back at Mark. "Sir, I don't have authority to turn around. I've got a signed contract." "I know you do," Mark said, "and I'm not blaming you. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your dispatcher. Your dispatcher is going to call the dealership. And then we're going to see what happens next." David made the calls. Within 20 minutes, Rick Holloway's pickup came down the county road, dust rising behind him like he was flying. Tyler's truck pulled in 5 minutes later. The three of them stood in the driveway while Mark didn't move from the gate. Tyler jumped out of his cab, face already red. "Dad, what the hell are you doing? This is my tractor." Mark spoke quietly. "It's the bank's tractor. You're just making payments on it, and it's not staying here." "You said I could run the farm." "I said you could farm the land. I didn't say you could mortgage it." Rick Holloway stepped forward, sensing the sale unraveling in real time. He was smooth. He had to be. "Gentlemen, let's calm down. Mr. Patterson, Mark, I understand your concerns, but Tyler is a grown man. He's made a business decision. This equipment will increase productivity, reduce costs in the long run." Mark turned to Rick with an expression that could have bent steel. "Rick, you sold my son $500,000 of equipment he doesn't need and can't afford. You did it knowing full well I'd never have approved it. You want to help? Get in your truck and get off my property." Rick's confidence flickered. "The contract is signed. The loan is approved. These tractors are legally purchased." "That may be true," Mark said, "but the delivery address is my property, and I'm refusing delivery. So unless you want to sue me for breach of contract, which I'm not party to, you can load that tractor back up, or James can find somewhere else to park it. But it's not staying here." Tyler's voice cracked. "You can't do this." "I can, and I am." The standoff held for 45 minutes. Tyler argued, pleaded, threatened to sue his own father. Mark didn't move. He finished his coffee. He waited. He was patient the way a man is patient when he knows he's right and time is on his side. Finally, Rick made the decision. He told David to load the tractor back up. "We'll figure something out," he said to Tyler. But Mark knew exactly what would happen. The tractor would sit on the dealership lot. Tyler would either find storage somewhere else or cancel and face penalties. Either way, the tractor wasn't coming onto Patterson land. As the lowboy backed toward the driveway to turn around, Tyler's humiliation was complete. He stood in the driveway of his family's farm, watching his future disappear on the back of a trailer, while his father stood at the gate, drinking cold coffee like it was any other October morning. When the dust settled, Mark looked at his son once more. "You're welcome to own that machine, but not here, and not on a farm you don't control." Tyler didn't answer. He got in his truck and left without saying goodbye. That was the moment everything changed. Mark didn't know it yet, but the real lesson was about to unfold over the next 6 months. Tyler found barn space 12 miles away, rented from a neighbor who'd been kind enough not to ask questions. $300 a month. He signed the paperwork without thinking much about it. At that point, what was another 300? He was already in debt. But the real cost started showing up in ways the dealer's financing sheet never mentioned. October rolled into November, and Tyler finally got the tractor operational on rented ground. His plan was simple: get some fall field work done, maybe finish some of the late planting that weather had pushed back. He needed to justify this machine's existence. He needed to prove his father wrong. The first week went well enough. The tractor ran smooth, the cab was warm, the data was flowing into his phone like he'd always imagined. He was actually starting to feel vindicated. Look at this efficiency. Look at these numbers. Then on the 8th day of operation, a sensor went bad. Just one sensor. Something in the hydraulic system. Tyler wouldn't have even known it was a problem except the dashboard lit up red. The tractor went into limp mode, operating at 40% capacity. Useless for any real work. Tyler called the dealer. Rick Holloway's voice on the phone was different than it had been during the sale. Colder. More distant. "We can get a technician out there next Thursday," Rick said. Thursday. 5 days away. Tyler felt something tighten in his chest. "Rick, it's November. The weather window is closing. I need this fixed now." "I understand, but our technicians are booked." "Can I fix it myself?" The pause was long enough that Tyler knew the answer before Rick spoke. "The software is locked. Only an authorized technician can diagnose the issue. If you attempt to repair it, you'll void the warranty." Tyler called an independent mechanic in the next county, a guy named Steve who'd been fixing equipment for 30 years. Steve had a reputation for being able to fix anything with 4 wheels and an engine. "Can you take a look at the hydraulic sensor?" Tyler asked. Steve was quiet for a moment. "It's a smart tractor?" "Yeah, a John Deere 8R. "Then no, I can't. The diagnostic tool is locked. The software is proprietary. I could probably figure out the mechanical part, but if I go in there without authorization, I'm voiding your warranty, and John Deere will know. They log everything remotely." Tyler felt the walls closing in. He was stuck. The tractor was broken. He couldn't fix it. The dealer wouldn't prioritize him, and time was running out. Thursday came and went. The technician showed up on Friday afternoon, spent an hour running diagnostics, reset the software, and drove away. The bill was $670 for a 30-second software reset. But that was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, an automatic software update arrived overnight. When Tyler went to the barn, the tractor had updated itself. And when he synced his phone to the cab, the aftermarket guidance system he'd spent $2,000 installing was suddenly disabled. Not broken, just turned off by the software. He called the dealer. "That's not an approved configuration," the tech support person said, like it was obvious. "The update was necessary for emissions compliance. That third-party system interfered with the emission control protocols." "So I can't use it anymore?" "Not without that update being rolled back, and we don't roll back updates. It would compromise the tractor's environmental compliance." Tyler sat in the cab of his $2,000 guidance system and understood for the first time what his father had been trying to tell him. He didn't own this machine. He was renting it, month to month, update to update, feature by feature. The bank owned the metal. John Deere owned everything that mattered. Mark never said, "I told you so." He didn't have to. October turned to November, and the weather did exactly what Mark had predicted it would do. Unpredictable. A warm spell early in the month, then a hard freeze midweek, then rain that shouldn't have come yet. The kind of weather that separates the farmers who can adapt from the ones who are locked into their plans. Tyler was locked. The Smart Tractor's predictive maintenance system flagged an issue in the second week of November. Not a disaster, not yet, just a warning. The hydraulic pressure was running slightly higher than normal. Nothing that would prevent operation, but the system recommended bringing the tractor in for a full inspection, not operating it under heavy load until the issue was diagnosed. But harvest doesn't wait for recommendations. The weather window was closing. The corn was dry. Every day mattered. Tyler tried to ignore the warning and work through it. He ran the tractor for 3 days, and by the third day, the hydraulic system started making a noise, a subtle grinding that Tyler felt more than heard, transmitted up through the seat and into his bones. He knew that noise meant something was wrong, something serious. He called Rick Holloway. Rick's recommendation was immediate. Get the tractor in for service. When? Tyler asked. We're pretty booked up, maybe 2 weeks out. 2 weeks. The harvest window was 3 weeks, maybe 4 if the weather held. Tyler felt the math collapsing around him. Mark was watching, not interfering, not saying anything, just watching from across the property line, the way a man watches someone make a mistake he could have prevented. On the evening of the third day, Mark came by the barn. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and a set of keys in the other. You need a tractor, Mark said. Not a question. Tyler was too tired to argue. The 4020? It's ready. Gassed up. Been running since July. The old John Deere 4020 was a 1965 model that Mark had rebuilt twice. It was slower than the Smart Tractor. It had no cab, no climate control, no data collection. The steering was manual. The transmission was old iron, simple and direct. It wasn't supposed to be able to keep up with a 2024 precision machine. But it was available, and it worked. Tyler used the 4020 for 4 days before the Smart Tractor's hydraulic system actually failed. Completely. Not a warning, not a recommendation, an actual breakdown that left the machine dead in a field, waiting for a dealer tech who wouldn't arrive for 2 weeks. So Tyler finished harvest on his father's old iron. He ran that 4020 for 14-hour days. No cab meant he was cold and wet and exhausted, but the machine didn't care. It just worked. When a hose blew on the 7th day, Mark came out and fixed it with a wrench and a sleeve of hose. $40 repair that took 20 minutes. The 4020 went back to work. The old tractor used half the fuel of the Smart machine. It required half the operator attention. It couldn't tell you the soil compaction or the yield variance or the nitrogen content of the field, but it got the corn out of the ground, and when the job was done, Mark showed Tyler the numbers. 2,000 acres harvested. The Smart Tractor contributed 0 bushels. The paid-off 4020 from 1965 harvested all of it. Tyler's net income for the year came down to simple mathematics. After his 10-year equipment payments on the Smart Tractor, after the financing costs, after the storage fee and the service calls and the lost productivity from downtime, he'd cleared $18,000 on 2,000 acres, less than $9 an acre. Mark didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He just poured another cup of coffee one November evening when the harvest was finished and Tyler finally came inside to sit at the kitchen table. Tom Hendricks farms 1,200 acres with old iron, Mark said quietly. No debt, no payments. He cleared $52,000 this year. It wasn't cruel. It was just math. The kind of math that doesn't care about efficiency ratings or software updates or pride. Winter came early that year. By December, snow was already piling up in the fields, and Tyler received a notice from the dealership. A mandatory software update was scheduled for mid-January. Nothing unusual about updates. They happened all the time now. Tyler didn't think much of it until he read what the update actually included. Geofencing. The tractor would not operate outside a 50-mile radius of the dealership without dealer authorization. That was the language, not a suggestion, not a warning, a hard boundary written into the machine's software. Tyler's farm was 47 miles from the dealership. He read the notice 3 times, certain he'd misunderstood. Then he called Rick Holloway, trying to keep his voice steady. Rick, I got this notice about geofencing. The update limits where I can operate the tractor to a 50-mile radius of your lot. My farm is 47 miles away. That means I've got basically a 3-mile operating window. Rick's pause was long enough that Tyler knew this wasn't a mistake. That's correct. The geofencing feature is for warranty and service purposes. If you need to operate outside that radius, you can submit a request to expand it. Submit it to who? Corporate. It takes a few weeks, but they usually approve it. Usually. Tyler's stomach tightened. And if they don't? Then you'd need to bring the tractor into our facility for all operations, or request authorization before each use. Tyler felt something cold settle into his chest. This is insane, Rick. I own this tractor. You own the hardware, Rick said, and there was something almost kind in his voice, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. We own the software, and the software controls where the hardware can operate. Tyler hung up and called corporate. He was transferred 3 times. He left messages. He sent emails. 3 weeks passed. When they finally responded, it was an email from someone whose signature line read, Agricultural Systems Compliance Officer. The geofencing radius was standard. It was in the terms of service. If Tyler wanted to expand the radius, that service would be available through an annual subscription, $2,400 per year, or he could request authorization for specific operations, which would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Tyler read that email sitting in the barn, and it was like watching the last piece of the puzzle fall into place. He didn't own the tractor. Not really. He'd bought the metal. John Deere owned the machine, and they were going to charge him for the privilege of using what he'd financed. He called Mark that evening. For the first time, his voice wasn't defensive. It was hollow. Dad, they won't let me operate the tractor off my own farm without paying an extra $2,400 a year. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Mark spoke, his voice was quiet and final. Welcome to the future. You own the metal. They own everything that matters. That phrase broke something in Tyler. The pretense, the defensiveness, the last remnant of pride. It all just gave way. And over the next week, Tyler made the hardest decision of his life. He stopped making payments on the smart tractor. The bank sent notices. The dealer called. By late January, the repossession happened on a gray afternoon when a flatbed showed up at the storage barn and took the machine away. Tyler watched it go, understanding that he was going to lose money, a lot of money. The depreciation hit was $180,000. What he owed, minus what the used market valued the machine at after 4 years of payments and 1 year of actual operation. $180,000 to learn his father's lesson. But something shifted when that tractor left. The debt left with it. And more importantly, the illusion dissolved. Mark found Tyler sitting in the 4020 cab 2 days later, just sitting, not operating, just thinking. You want to rebuild? Mark asked. Tyler nodded without speaking. We'll use the 4020 and the 4440. Both paid for, both fixable, both ours. Tyler eventually bought a used 8R from a farmer in the next county, a man who'd also given up on smart tractors. $220,000 cash. Then he paid a technician in Des Moines $2,000 to remove the software locks using third-party diagnostic tools. The tractor still ran the new engine, the new hydraulics, the new cab, but it ran like old iron now, fully under Tyler's control. The software lock isn't a glitch, it's the business model. Manufacturers want recurring revenue, not one-time sales. Today's farmers are told to digitize and automate, then locked out when they can't afford the subscription. When a corporation can control your equipment with a software update, who truly owns your farm? Mark understood something Tyler had to learn the hard way. Independence means the ability to fix what you own. The machines that actually matter are the ones you can repair with your own hands. The gate lock that October morning saved Tyler's entire future. Subscribe.